Welcome to my talk on the power of prayer, giving insight from the readings of Edgar Cayce, known as America's sleeping prophet, the father of the holistic medicine and the New Age movement. I'm Story Lucille Ducey, one of the faculty members and non-traditional ministers for the Institute of Spiritual Development in Oneonta, New York. Institute. It's an interesting name for a church and a school. ISD has two programs, our School for Metaphysical Studies and our non-traditional church, or I would say, as our brother and sister spiritualists from the 1800s would call us, a free church. We are free from dogma, and we freely support every individual's spiritual path and respect diverse spiritual paths, what is called in academic seminary circles, diverse God talk. I like to say God talk, or the many names of God, is like ice cream. Some people need chocolate, some people love strawberry, and still others need tutti frutti or rainbow sherbet. Essentially, as metaphysicians or New Age thinkers, we understand, as their yogic saying goes, there's one God with many names, one truth, but many pathways. It echoes Edgar Cayce's first lesson in his study guide, The Search for God. I've been a student of the Edgar Cayce material since I'm 20. And in fact, I have to confess, my mother had Edgar Cayce books on her bedside table. So I've been curious about them since I was very young. So The Search for God is a group of readings that his friends asked for towards the end of his life, after the hospital that he started had to be closed during the Depression. So he was very depressed. It has been a dream of his to create a hospital where there could be holistic treatments from the information he was getting. So they gathered around him, a very depressed Edgar Cayce, letting you know that even prophets have ups and downs. Life is a trial. And they asked him serious questions about spirituality. And as a result, these readings called A Search for God came up. So when one of the first lessons is the law of one, he suggested, as many enlightened teachers have from all ages, that the key to understanding the mysteries of life, and especially the role and potential of humankind, is to navigate and translate all mysteries, all questions, through the concept, the lens of the law of one. In fact, one of the primary characteristics of a transcendental experience or mystical revelation is the experience of your individual self merging with the all of life. Your finite self experiencing the infinite nature of the all that is, including ourselves. These experiences have a profound sense of oneness. That is the revelation. Or as Dr. Spock on Star Trek often said, one in many, many in one. Here at ISD, we respect the many names of God. We also respect every individual, for we know each of us has and is a physical manifestation of God. And each of us has a living connection to God and an ability to communicate through all planes of existence. This is one of our primary principles at ISD. In fact, it is this innate ability to communicate that is the power of prayer, or how prayer works. We'll explore more of this in a moment. First, let's review the many names of God, of what the ages have referred to as God. Here's an excerpt from a recently published book. Let me grab it. Written by Herbert Bruce Pierre, a seasoned academic and a scientist. He has written many books on the Edgar Cayce readings, and here's a sample of this. If you are familiar with the Edgar Cayce readings, there's a book called the Edgar Cayce Primer. There's also a book on meditation that Herbert wrote many years ago. So here we go. Here's the opening paragraph. The great problem of all religions has been to understand the nature of the relationship between God and humankind. There are difficulties of terminology as to whether the infinite is to be referred to as the universe, the divine, the one, or as God, or as Om, Yahweh, Allah, or the void, or the divine mother, the goddess, oneness, the all, or the creative forces, or infinite intelligence. And what we are saying is, whatever your name for creative forces or infinite intelligence, we accept all the different names for this infinite unknown, knowing that we are connected to it. Nevertheless, the question remains as to the possibility and specific nature of the relationship of the infinite to an individual person. This is the query of the psalmist when he asks, quote, "What is man that thou art mindful of him?" Psalm 8:4. We are finite expressions of the infinite. And as Jesus would say, know ye not that ye are godlings in the making. Okay, move on. One of Cayce's reference to our God nature, when not specifically using Christian terminology, noting our Christ nature, Christ consciousness, was the creative forces or infinite intelligence. So when you study with us or join a service, rest easy, knowing we respect and honor all names for God, and we acknowledge this living force within you. Cayce, when asked about the goal of life, would say, to know yourself, to be yourself, and a part of the Christ. One could also say, to know yourself, to be yourself, and at one with God consciousness. In other words, to know yourself, to be yourself, and part of the creative forces. This is the thesis of Bruce Panier's book, that is, in fact, we are living manifestations of infinite consciousness in a finite body. So when we speak of spiritual development at ISD and in our intuitive development circles, we are recognizing and working towards helping one another develop our own individual innate intuitive abilities to not only speak to God and infinite intelligence in prayer, but to also listen to the response we receive. When Jesus said, "The Father and I are one," or "I sit at the right hand of the Father," or "You too can do these things and you will become even greater," this teacher, this initiate into true knowledge is saying, I am at one with infinite intelligence, and so too can you be. This quite simply and remarkably is the power of living prayer. Waking up to and gathering evidence for this power within us to communicate with and co-create from our finite selves with our infinite selves. Jesus' claim that I and the Father are one, and his teaching to all people of their divine inheritance and powers, these are the teachings that brought about his crucifixion. The temple authorities then, as many traditional religions today, find the teaching of our living connection to the divine. Call it what you will. They find its heresy. They find its hubris. They find its madness. These traditions, though, through ignorance or intent, at some point in history, insisted on the need for a priest or an imam or a minister for the intercession with God, that you needed someone else. You needed a divine authority to approach the Holy of Holies within. This is what Jesus rebelled against. And when Jesus said, quote, "No one can go to the Father except through me," he was saying, you too must become enlightened or wake up to your living connection by following his example. How is this possible? What is the power of living prayer? Is it the simple recognition of our telepathic nature and learning the right use of our telepathic nature? All minds are connected. It's one of the primary teachings in the Course in Miracles. And all minds are entangled, which is the primary scientific evidence from the author and scientist Dean Radin. In fact, he's got a book called Entangled Minds. There is so much evidence in the scientific research that has started in the 60s onward that our minds, in fact, are connected, that prayer, in fact, brings a change and supports in people. There's so much scientific evidence now that the naysayers are simply those people who refuse to leave their own worldview. For scientists who just don't believe there's anything more than this flesh brain. So it's just a matter of paradigm, and things are changing. Most people in the United States affirm the power of prayer, and many people, at least a fourth of us, believe in the immortality of the soul. So you're not alone. Cayce was able in deep trance to receive answers from infinite intelligence, often called the Akashic Records or the living book of life. We too can do this. And in fact, we receive intuitive guidance from our infinite selves all day long. Would we quiet our personality's inner talk long enough to hear the still, small, silent voices within? And if you think about that voice of conscience, it's always talking to you, always poking you, and always prodding you. That is part of your infinite intelligence at work all day long. Many people scoff at the power of prayer out of belief in God, calling these beliefs superstitions, fantasies, the opiate of the people. In your own life, indeed, you know that this is not true. If you are listening to this service, you have had a direct knowledge of the power of intuition and the power of prayer. These are the gifts of the Holy Spirit, and certainly in intuitive development circles that we host at ISD, we gather evidence first for our telepathic abilities by practicing intuitive readings person to person. Now, this is why we are called an Institute of Spiritual Development. Institutes engage in research projects. They engage in gathering evidence, not only for the people in the future, but for people now. So this is part of what we do in a non-traditional way at the Institute of Spiritual Development. Help you and each other get more and more evidence for our telepathic nature and evidence for life beyond life. So here we go. Then we take our research further by developing and receiving evidence for our abilities to communicate with loved ones who have passed beyond the veil. Evidential mediumship is precisely about bringing forth evidence of a loved one in spirit, in a different dimension of life, communicating with us here in the earth dimension, very much like a bicycle wheel. When it's stationary, you can see the spokes. That's a great example for the three-dimensional earth world. When the bike is in motion, the spokes disappear. So when we're communicating with loved ones, they are in a higher vibrational field, vibrating at a higher vibration. They're with you in presence in your room if they're visiting, or they're with you through the telepathic nature and the radio nature, the radio aspects of our consciousness, regardless of what dimension they are coming through. Remember, Jesus always said that in my Father's house, there are many mansions. These are metaphors. There are many dimensions. I'll give a workshop on February 13th on Saturday for 2 hours in the morning, an initial evidential mediumship one-on-one. So those of you who are interested, please join me. Check the calendar. When Edgar Cayce said, "Why worry when you can pray?" he is reminding us to go within, to quiet the voice of worry within or around our daily personality, and to seek guidance and help, strength and courage from the God, the spirit within, from your own creative forces, from our own infinite intelligence. He's not being flippant or offering us a placebo. He is saying, quiet your finite mind and seek help from your access to infinite mind. During the day, we're in our finite mind, but you all experience infinite intelligence at night, in the dream state, far more open. So the dreams that you bring back are postcards from your own infinite intelligence seeking to communicate and remind your daily personality and guide us. Many great teachers and sacred texts like the Bible speak in parables and metaphor. An outer explanation called exoteric is given for an inner or esoteric concept or power. This is done for two primary reasons. Not everyone is ready or has the ethical character to develop and to use knowledge of our inner powers wisely. And indeed, Cayce would say, as most teachers of intuitive development know, it's not so much about taking specific psychic development classes first. What's important is to develop your own character. The more you have purified your character, rising from the animal reactive nature to the higher reasoning nature that we have when we choose to use it, that you are purifying your body and getting ready just naturally. The more your character is developed, the more you naturally can hear insights from the higher infinite intelligence. We are wired for this. Our bodies are created to become vehicles for infinite intelligence, and not just one time a day or accidentally, but all day long. The other reason is many so-called authorities down through the ages have forced the teaching of our true powers underground. So parables and metaphor teach truth in hidden ways. As Jesus said, I give milk to babies and meat to men. Here's an example. What is an angel? A separate life wave, another order of being. Turning the digital page, or a metaphor for our infinite intelligence that always oversees us. And Cayce would say that sense of a guardian angel is actually you and your infinite intelligence that is always rooted in the higher dimensions, has never left the right hand of the Father, has never left the source, but is here and available should your personality want to listen to the still, small, quiet wisdom voices that are always speaking to us. Okay, so now I'm going to read from the Search for God, okay, about prayer, the definition of prayer and meditation. So if you want to close your eyes and just listen to what's being said, it might sit with a little more ease. Prayer defined and illustrated. Some individuals give little thought to either prayer or meditation. They are satisfied to drift with the current, hoping that somehow or somewhere conditions will work out for the best. There are others who seek a better way, searching for that light which renews hope, gives a more perfect understanding of their present lot, and justifies the course of life that is being pursued. Prayer is the concerted effort of our physical consciousness to become attuned to the consciousness of the Creator, the consciousness of divine infinite intelligence. Prayer is the attunement of our daily conscious minds to the spiritual forces that can manifest in a material world. It may be a cooperative experience, as this morning, of many individuals coming together with one thought, one intention in mind. Prayer to some is the pouring out of the personality for outward show to be seen by others. To others, it means entering into the closet of the inner self and pouring out the ego so that the inner being may be filled with the Spirit of the Father, of the divine, of the creative forces. Call it what you will. These divergent attitudes are illustrated in an example drawn by Christ. And here it goes on to recognize that some people pray loudly in churches or synagogues, and others pray quietly at home under the trees in a walk in nature. But those who pray quietly, the Christ was teaching, are very much more in tune with the inner holy of holies than those who pray loudly out in the world. That's actually one of the concepts that this country was founded on: freedom of conscience, freedom to pray and reach the divine or the higher self in accordance to your own inner navigator. It's a beautiful thing that we have, and may we continue to protect it. Here's Cayce's definition of meditation. Meditation is the emptying of ourselves of all that hinders the creative force from rising along the natural channels of our physical bodies to be disseminated through the sensitive spiritual centers in our physical bodies. These spiritual centers are everywhere that you have a major gland and a major organ in your body. When meditation is properly entered into, we are made stronger mentally and physically. Quote, "He went into the strength of that meat received for many days." This is a reference to going into prayer. You are receiving meat that cannot be seen, bread that cannot be seen. This is part of the manna from heaven or from the higher spiritual centers coming down into the body, giving you strength, giving you food on so many levels. Meditation is not musing or daydreaming, but attuning our mental and physical bodies to their spiritual source. It is arousing the mental and spiritual attributes to an expression of their relationship with their maker. This is true meditation. Meditation is prayer from within the inner self and partakes not only of the inner physical man, but of the soul aroused by the Spirit from within. In prayer, we speak to God. We seek guidance from our higher minds. In meditation, God or our higher minds speak to us. The most powerful routine to follow is first pray for yourself to make an alignment with your higher self, and then meditate. And then after a deep meditation and attunement, then pray again. And the second part of praying is when you should be praying for others, for the world, for the energy that has been raised in your body through the Kundalini forces, moving around, opening up the higher spiritual centers, giving you strength and vibration. This energy is actually generated from our sexual centers. These sexual centers do not go dormant after the time of the ability to create children. These sexual centers are our creative engine. They work all day long. So for those of you who feel rocking or tingling in your root chakra and sexual centers in deep meditation, you are feeling that inner engine turning on, and it's sending the energy up through the spinal cord, through all the other centers that the Lord's Prayer talks about, and then disseminating it through these upper glands. There are said to be some perfect cells within the body. Ernest Holmes would call it a divine pattern in the body. So deep prayer and meditation can activate these perfect cells of the divine pattern in your body and give you longer life, or give you the inner medicine that you need to get through a very difficult disease. But as you raise this energy in prayer and meditation, then send it out in prayer after meditation. It's literally a life force, a spiritual energy. It is a true something that comes from you and is sent out into the world to others. So this is a fascinating vehicle that we inhabit. Should we learn to use it well for the highest good of all concerned? So if you're intrigued or stimulated by today's talk about prayer, join us for our Prayer Toolbox series beginning this month and running through April. Many of the faculty members will be sharing their various modes of prayer with you and listening to your experiences with prayer. We love discussion and group mind at ISD. So it is through the power of prayer for ourselves and for one another that we can be agents of change in the world at this time through prayer, through recognizing our telepathic abilities and our abilities to influence the group mind and to invoke group wisdom to offset the fierce stirring up of group fear and panic at this time. This is how you can be prayerful warriors, spiritual warriors at home, helping to offset the group mind at this time that is stimulated by so much fear. So join us at ISD and learn to develop and trust and gather evidence for the intuitive abilities that you are wired to be using on behalf of yourself and our world. Thank you.